What's up everybody, welcome back to yet another live stream of channel CodeX. This is your host Afzal, and as you have seen in the thumbnail, today we are going to talk about JSON. Alright, so let me see who all have joined first of all. Because this is a live stream, you can expect a lot of chit chat in between, and towards end of the video, of course in between also we'll be discussing, but overall once the video is going to complete, you will learn the basics of JSON. And this video particularly, I'm targeting someone who is newcomer, who just started learning programming, who just started interacting with APIs, and they are not able to figure out how to parse that JSON, when it is array, when it is model, and they're all confused about how does this thing work. So in this video, we will discuss all those things. We'll cover the basics. We'll start from the definition and all sort of thing. Okay, so Vicky in the house, hello, thank you so much for joining. Beacon of Hope Network from Philippines, thank you so much for joining. Sherdil, hello, assalamu alaikum, walaikum assalam. So we have 13 concurrent viewers as of now, which is a good number for a small channel, something like us. And guys, if you haven't subscribed, it's your wish. Like you can subscribe channel CodeX because on this channel we keep on putting videos which help you grow as a developer. So generally I put videos on Flutter, but overall this channel targets all the mobile platform and the basics like API integration, HTTP calls, RESTful APIs, and then JSON. This is something which is common for every single platform. So you can consider subscribing if that is something useful for you. All right. Ravi Kumar, hello, how are you doing? Mohan Mikari, thank you so much for joining. Mr. Reality, thank you so much. It's been a while. Yeah, caught you live. Hope you're good. I'm doing good, really good. And a lot of good and bad things are happening at the same time. But overall, it's a very good, everything is fine. I can say that. All right. So let me just share my screen. Okay, probably you can see my iPad screen now, and this is what we're going to learn today. JSON, the JavaScript object notation. Now with the abbreviation you can understand that this is some sort of notation, like some sort of presentation of the data. And what JavaScript is doing here is basically this has taken from this whole you can say the representation way is taken from the JavaScript. So any JSON is a valid JavaScript code. So if you have an object, right, with a key value and you put it as a JavaScript variable, it's a valid code. So yeah, it follows the syntax of JavaScript because JavaScript runs on all the platform, starting from the browser to your mobiles to desktop, Linux, Windows, everywhere it runs. So that's why they have taken this idea from JavaScript. So the syntax matches with the JavaScript, but it is not like to run or to understand JSON, you need to have a JavaScript compatible device, or like you should be having, a JavaScript install, Java virtual machine install. It's not like that. Only the syntax has been taken from there. Okay, we will start in a bit with all the details, all the discussion, but let me just clear this one more time that this is going to cover all the basics of the JSON. We'll talk about all the data type it supports. We'll talk about how to understand JSON if something is written in front of you, right? And what does it mean? Like how should you approach, how should you extract data from it? Or if you want to create JSON for yourself, maybe you want to design an API. So all those basic things we are going to cover. If you are a pro developer, if you are already, an expert Flutter developer, so maybe you can leave this live stream, or like I'm not saying to leave you, but this is something which is not going to be very much, fruitful for you guys, because we'll be discussing, the basic thing which you are already pro in. But of course, if you want to just stick around, say hi to each other, and you want to listen me up, we are good. Okay. Al-Tayyab Yusuf is saying your Flutter videos are awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. And if you guys haven't seen, just check out all the videos on Flutter topic. I have covered starting from state management to UI designing and all the tips and tricks, starting from utilizing your application, making it performant using Dart Dev tool. So all those topics are there. If you haven't seen yet, go ahead and watch that. And let me also ask this question. Write down in the comment section if you're joining for the first time or if you're a regular viewer. And if you're a regular viewer, then you must be missing me, right? So just let me know in the comment section, like, is it your first time on channel CodeX or you have been there before? Okay. Let's take a few comments. Budi Santoso is saying, hello sir, my name is Budi from Indonesia. Thank you so much, Budi, for joining today's live stream, and I hope you find this live stream useful by end of it. So yeah, let's get started with today's topic, which is JSON JavaScript notation. So first thing, what is JSON? Let me just write it down here. What is JSON? And sorry about the bad handwriting, because in live stream I cannot afford to make those font very clear and everything. So yeah, at least it's better than doctor's handwriting, right? So you can understand. So the first question is, what is JSON? JSON is a data presentation, way of presenting data. Let me put it this way: way of representing data. Makes sense? So say for example, I have to tell you that my name is Afzal, and what I can do in JSON, I can create a name key and provide a value Afzal. So basically it's telling you my name is Afzal, but in a different syntax, in a different form, which is understandable on majority of the platforms, because JSON is very lightweight. Okay, so that we will discuss about why to use JSON, right? So what is JSON? It's a representation of data, correct? And it's a key value pair. So the structure generally is a key value pair. So anytime you have to find any information, you have to know the key of that information. So if I just say what is your name, so you will be searching for the key name and you will find a value, what is his name, right? So Ahmed Ali, a regular viewer. Vicky Girdev, regular. I also miss you, sir. Exif original. Thank you so much. A lot of regular viewers are there in the house, and I hope others, new members also will join today's live stream, so that they also can be benefited. And what you guys can do is share this live stream with your friends who have just started learning programming, who have just passed out from college, or whom you think that they really need to understand JSON, they really need to understand the way of programming. Share this live stream with those people so that they will also benefit, and they can also ask question in this live stream. All right, so JSON is a representation way, and it represents the data in the form of key value pair. Now there's a different data type it supports. We will discuss that also in a moment. Now I hope this is clear, right? So let's discuss why JSON. Okay. Now let me just put it in this way. When you're interacting with network, right? You don't when you're handling the client device, you don't have all the data present inside your phone. So what generally happens? There's an API, there's a database somewhere in the back, somewhere on the other side, from where you want to fetch it and show it to the user. So there's a communication between your client device and the server. So how that data transfers, right? We don't have to go to the network layer and understand all the data protocol, but on the top level, what happens whenever you request something, and like whatever you request, you specify that I want this data, and server gives you back that data. It has to be in certain form, it has to be in certain language, right? So JSON is preferred over XML. Now preferably there's two languages, I would say, XML and JSON, which is widely used, commonly used. So XML is pretty hard to understand. If you have a XML written in front of you, you will need time to understand it. The parser is importantly. So because XML and JSON are widely accepted two of the forms of interacting with the API, so I'll compare this YJSON in terms of XML, like we'll compare with the XML. So XML is hard to understand. This is one reason you should be using JSON. Now, when I say hard to understand, not just for humans, even the parsers, they are not, on all the platforms, you will not find parser for XML. Say, for example, if you're writing a mobile application inside C# for Xamarin platform, so the parser is not natively available on the Android and iOS side. So you cannot parse XML directly, but the JSON parser, you will find it globally on all the platforms. So XML is hard to understand by the platforms also. And let's talk about JSON. Let's not talk about others, okay? JSON is lightweight. Okay, when I say lightweight, means the representation itself doesn't involve so much of tags and angular brackets and this and that. It's very lightweight. It has just simple key value pairs, and it is easy to transmit, it is easy to understand, it's widely accepted. Okay, and there are other benefits also. We will come around when we are talking about the structure, when we are talking about the data types. So this is just a basic why JSON and what is JSON. Let me also take some comments in between. So Mr. Reality, I think I have already answered your question. Which is better, XML or JSON? Of course JSON, because XML is not parsable on all the language, all the platforms natively, right? You have to write some other API, or you have to write some third-party dependency to parse that XML, and XML is not easy to understand as well, and it's not lightweight. That's why JSON is always preferred. Marketing information is saying, welcome back, boss. You are doing a great job. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. Mr. Reality says, also from Ghana here. Good to see you guys. Okay, so I hope this basic is clear. Now let's actually move to the part where we will learn the JSON, how to understand it, what are the things it supports, and how we should be looking at any JSON data, how we can read it. So let's talk about, let me just put this here, okay, and select a darker font. Now, the data types. So any sort of communication, when you are transferring some information to other person, there's something called grammar, right? Because when you're talking to someone else, you need to follow some rules and regulation of that language. So in terms of programming, that is called data types, right? Makes sense? So there are certain things which is allowed, right? In certain way you have to communicate. You cannot just write hello there, how are you, and that will be transferred without any rules and regulation to your mobile device and you will be able to see. No, you have to follow certain rules. As I said, JavaScript follows a key value pair, so you have to provide a valid key, you have to provide a valid value for that, and put that whole thing inside a valid object, right? So these all things comes under data types. What are the things are supported, how you are going to communicate, and how you are going to pass that data. So first of all, JSON supports string, okay, so that you can write something like hello, you can write your name. Makes sense? So any information which you want to pass as a string, it's allowed inside JSON. Then JSON supports number. I should be using different color pen for this, but it's fine. And when we talk about numbers, all the numbers like negative ones, or you have some decimal number like 3.14, or you have some exponential number, the scientific numbers like 1e, 24, I don't know. So all these numbers are accepted. Decimal, negative, positive, of course, you can write something like this. So all these numbers are accepted as a valid JSON, right? Then what comes is null. So your any of the value, right? Say for example, you have certain data for certain user and that user doesn't have that value, so you can, in that place, you can provide null data. So null is also a valid JSON. Then you have something, now we are moving little bit up on the composition level. You have something called object, and object is represented with curly braces. So whenever you see a curly brace inside JSON, it means it is object. Then we have something called array, which is represented with square brackets. So curly brackets and square brackets. Square bracket always means an array, curly braces always means object, right? Let me check some comments right now. Okay, Xsoft saying happy to see you here, let's learn together, bro. Okay. RV, hello sir, how are you doing? I'm doing good. I only know Excel formula or spreadsheet. Okay, so maybe you will learn JSON today. All right, Surgery Sharov is saying from Russia, welcome to live stream. I hope everything is going good there, hopefully, and hopefully we'll all be in peace. Okay, let's not get political here. Mr. Reality saying my confusion mostly from the data structure the JSON is packed in. Example, a list of set map or of JSON or set map of list of JSON. Hope it's clear. So yes, of course, Mr. Reality, we're going to talk about that as well. Basically, this comes under the category where we will define how to read the JSON, how to understand the JSON, and what are the things you are really concerned about that JSON file. You don't have to read everything, how you can pick particular item, how you can pick particular node. So all things we're going to discuss. Okay, so these are the data types, basic data types inside of JSON. You have object, you have array, and most specifically you will be using the number and string. So let me just put it with a different color so that it's nice to understand. Okay, let me use red here. Okay, perfect. So string, number, null, object, and array. Hopefully I'm not missing anyone. If it is so, we'll add up in later one. So this all are the data types which JSON supports. Okay, let's move it to the next thing where we will construct a JSON object and we will see how does that, how to read that. Okay, so let's talk about the examples. Okay. And I hope you guys are enjoying the way of my teaching. I'm literally writing on iPad and showing it to you guys. Let me know the feedback also, if that the way of teaching is good, or I should be just presenting something like a slide, or this way is better. And in between you can ask question as well. I am looking at the chat so I can answer you immediately. Mr. Reality saying you should do a video on how you edit your videos. Really clean. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Nobody said before that. Okay. So generally I do edit on Premiere Pro, and this live stream I am doing from OBS Studio, by the way, if you guys want to know that. Okay, let's talk about the example. So if you want to pass just a string, okay, that is a valid JSON, right? But you don't want to come up with a situation where you don't have any reference of that data, like it's just a string and user will not be able to understand what should I do with that string. So say for example, just consider this as an example. Your API response gives you something like done. Okay, so this is a valid JSON, right? But what is done? What about which status it is saying done? So you will be unclear about that. Now done makes a lot of sense here, but think about something, some information which is it has given in the form of string. So you will be confused. Okay, it's talking about what just happened, right? So instead of using the above data types, these data types openly, we enclose them inside an object. What I mean with that, so most of the time you will be using object to wrap your data. Okay, now this is very important. So let's see. how we can wrap our data. So say for example, I have to communicate you back, like you asked what is your name, that's the API, and I give you my name is Afzal. So how I would write that in form of a JSON. So first thing which I will do is I will create an object. Okay, here we go. So this is an object which you will receive. Inside that I will say name colon Afzal. Make sense? Now let me just talk about some of the terminologies here. So this part here, oh my goodness. Okay, this part here is called key. This part is a value. So your value, particularly this thing, can be of any type. Currently it is a string because it's quoted inside double quotes. It can be any of these data types. So your key will always be a string. So let me just put that as well. Key is always a string and value is always your allowed data types. Okay, so anytime you want to define any key, you have to put that inside double quotes. If you don't put, it's going to be invalid and you'll not be able to parse. You can see that red errors and all those things. It will really be messed up. Mr. Reality saying I prefer this. Slides will get boring, either this method or animated explanation. Animated explanation takes a lot of time and I'm really running out of time all the time, always. So I prefer doing this way because in between I can, it's a traditional way of teaching when you're writing something on the board and students are learning. So yeah, a good suggestion though, because if you have to create something short video, I can go for animated videos. Okay, let me take another comment. Saner Mike is saying, hey bro, can you email me the code for your video for REST API with Flutter step-by-step tutorial? And thank you in advance. Okay, it's pretty basic tutorial by the way, I would say, but if you need that, I will put it in the comment section or maybe in the description of the video so that you can take a reference from. Okay, so we are talking about the example. Now your key will always be a string and your value can be anything. Now let's take a bigger example. And you can ask any question, like if you think about that, okay, what does it mean here? Why we have added particular this thing? So you can write down in the chat box. I'm here to answer. So the another example would go like something like this, okay, where we'll say name and just make a habit to put these quotes because a lot of time it happens, you just forget the quotes inside key. So this is really important. Put a colon, this is kind of a equal to, right, in terms of JSON. So my name would be a string, okay, Afzal. Then I will write age, okay. Now this is going to be a number, so I will say 29, okay. And one thing you will notice here that I haven't added a code. So anytime you want to represent any number, you just write the numbers directly, don't use codes. Now, if you write ABCD here, it will not work. ABCD will not be able to parse as a valid JSON and you will get error. So if you have, alphabets and alphanumeric, that should go inside codes. And if you just have a pure number, then you don't have to use codes and it will become integer or double or whatever you have, right? Then let's say is a YouTuber. Okay, and colon. Now is YouTuber, what it's saying that it's going to be either true or false. I am a YouTuber or I'm not a YouTuber, correct? So it's not going to have any other value. For that, yes. And I was thinking about this, actually I missed one data type when I was talking about. So let's jump back here and discuss this. So there's one more data type, okay, which is called Boolean. How can I forget that? Okay, so let me write Boolean. Now Boolean data types are either true or false without quotes. Now this is a string. Now this is a special type where you are writing a string but you're not putting quotes and the allowed values are true or false. So anytime you end up writing like true or false, the system will treat it as a valid JSON, but you don't have to put quotes. So remember that. Okay, so now I'm writing value true, and it will treat it as a Boolean. Now Beacon of Hope Network has pointed one very good thing, that he said no comma, and that's a really good point. I purposely kept that for the later part, because in the first one we didn't put comma and it was a valid JSON. So if you look at the first example, let me just number also here, first one. So the first example I didn't put any comma, but if you don't put any comma in the second example, it's gonna give you error. The reason, because each key value should be separated by comma. So that's a very good observation there. Okay, some commas are small, some commas are big, but I have separated everything with comma. Now again, there's a catch, because this is very, very common mistake people are doing. When we are putting comma, we put it for all the key value. You don't have to put the comma on the last one. So here you can see is YouTuber true will be without comma at the end, because we are not separating anything after is YouTuber. Makes sense? So in between, like after each key value, you have to put comma, comma, comma until you come to the last element. So now this is a valid JSON. Okay. Mr. Reality says nice commas. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Xsoft, meaning null will be no available, null, right? Exactly. So let's say this example where maybe the user have not specified the age. So let me answer the question of Xsoft and how we can handle that data type as well. So in my profile, I have specified my date of birth, and because of that, I know I'm 29 years old. Yes, I'm 29, by the way. So what if the user has chosen not to specify his date of birth? So in that situation, you will not be able to calculate age and what you should be returning to the API. So in that case, you can return null comma. So instead of this part, okay, instead of this part, you can write this part. So the key will be same, age, but the value will be null, because you are not aware of date of birth of the user, so you cannot provide that data. No copy on last element. Copy on last element, what does it mean? Okay, Abhishek Giri is asking, when you start Firebase? It's gonna come soon. Once I get time, I will surely do that. I have a lot of things in plan about entire course of Flutter, Firebase projects, Firebase web pages. So a lot of things are going to come on. I just need support of you guys. Keep liking the video, write down your comments so that it spreads, it reaches out to more people. And of course, I'm gonna come with the new videos. So, okay. All right, so let's talk about JSON. Come back, we'll take a few comments later on. So at this point, I think it's pretty clear that what data type when we should use. So any string, double quotes, any number without quotes, but it should be completely numeric value. If you don't have the data, you can say null. And if you want to represent Boolean, you can either write true or false and without quotes, right? So this is just a typical example of JSON. Now let's move to a bigger picture. Now let's talk about, nested JSONs. So maybe like, I'll see how does it go in a couple of minutes, like 10-15 minutes, we'll end up this session, because this is all about covering up the basics. So I'll just cover a few more topics and then we'll end up, and maybe in future, if like we need a dedicated tutorial about JSON to Flutter communication and JSON to Dart perspective, so we can have a session as well. So let's move to the third example. Okay, let me choose the black pencil. Okay, the third example goes something like this. So let's talk about, users. So in my system, And let's move on from personal data to something called employees. Okay, so employer name, okay, CodeX. We will put comma because we're gonna write something else the bottom. And now comes the important part, employees. Now here what's gonna happen, your employees can be array, like one company can have multiple employees. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna write square bracket here. Now we can talk about nested JSON here, so let me just put that in a picture. How does it gonna how it's gonna look like? So you can have a multiple employees for the company, then you can have employees are managers as well, but let me just put okay, let me just add something else. What else we have in a company? So we have maybe assets. Oops. This can be another array, okay, with comma, and then so on. You can have as many elements as you want. Now let me just stop here. Okay, I will delete this and last comma. All right, so inside each employee, what you're gonna write is basically you have to add employee data. So something like this. This is one of the employee whose name is Afzal, age is 29, is YouTuber, true, and something like this. So this entire thing over here, you can put it inside of this section. Make sense? Now I need your feedback over here. That is it. Now once we move to the nested JSON, is it clear still for you guys, or it's making a little bit of confusion? Because this is something you really need to understand, how we can nest things, because the keys, it's gonna always be a string, right? That never gonna change, but your values can be any supported value by JSON. So we have a string here, we have array over here, we can have object next to that. So Mr. Reality says understand. That's a good feedback. Now we can move ahead. At least one person nodded, so it's good to go ahead. Right now what I'm gonna do here, let me just this thing, right, this thing over here, I'm gonna magnify for you guys. So I will write something like this. Okay, not with a pencil, I want to use pen. Employees, okay, double quote, and then I will use a square bracket. Now what it's gonna do inside here, because it's an array, it can hold any of the valid elements. So you can have array of string, you can have array of integer, array of boolean, array of object, and array of array as well. So you have n level of nesting. It's all allowed because it's a valid JSON. So here we're gonna have array of objects. So this is your first employee, this is your second employee, and this is your third employee. Make sense? Again, here you will have name and the actual data of name, right? Then comma separated, you're gonna have another value, comma, another value, and like that. So this is your first object inside the array, second object, third object. My screen is going green and I can see that there's a lag as well. Let me just check my stream health real quick. All the secrets revealed. Let's see one more time. Okay, I can see 30 frames per second now. CPU utilization back to 10%, which is good. So maybe this is because of the Chrome browser. Okay, so I should probably put my chat window somewhere. So now I think we are good. Yeah, it's back to 8% of CPU utilization, and yes, beacon of hope, I have utilized, like I have optimized the OBS for the best performance. I am using a proper encoding, proper everything. So this should be good, but so many hardwares are connected, you know, the camera, the audio, iPad, my phone, and I'm controlling this live stream over the Wi-Fi from my another phone. Let me just show you real quick. This is one of the nice application. Let me just turn to camera mode. So this is one of the application I created. Maybe you can see right here. So what it does, it communicates with OBS and it changes the scene and it changes the layout over the time. So yeah, let's get back to the iPad. Okay, so everything is good now. We are back on track, and this is fine in live stream, you know, because it's not a pack video where you have to end up in a limited time. We have enough of time. You can go for hours and hours, so no restriction on that. But I have some limitation on time because I'm fasting and I have to, you know, go for iftar in 1 hour or so. So yeah, of course, we'll not extend that much. So let's get back to the topic and end in 10 to 15 minutes. We'll try to end up, we'll say, depending on the user's feedback. Okay. Mr. Reality, it's something in not even in an alpha stage, I can say. I just developed for myself, but I have planned to publish this as a free software, of course, with the advertisement. So I'm planning to release this application really soon, like a month or two. So I'm working on it, and it has a cool features. You know, you can just drag and drop all the elements which you need. It's not something like a Streamlabs. They provide a Stream Deck where all the sources, all the elements will come by default, and it's just like you know, Stream Deck from Elgato, where you can set up all the keys for yourself. You can set up when to clap. So if I press the button, okay, you can hear the clap sound and you can see that clap picture as well. So this is all I'm controlling from my mobile remotely. And yeah, that's communicating over a WebSocket, by the way, let me tell you. So yeah, I have a plan to publish this application real soon, in months or two maybe. It's done with Flutter. Yeah, 100% Flutter. Rarely I have used packages here. It's all pure Flutter code. Okay, now I have spent so much time discussing the nonsense things. Let's back to the topic. So when we talk about array, you can have array of names. So if you just want from server who all are subscriber of channel CodeX, you can, you know, return something like this. So I'll just write name of Mr. Reality. Let me see who all are there. Beacon, I'll just use half of the word. Okay, so this is again a valid JSON. If your server returns this as a response, means you have a list of strings and you should parse this to list of string. Now we move to the part where we are discussing how to read the JSON. Okay, so this is list of string. Now if you have something like, sorry, true, false, false, true. Now it doesn't make much sense, but let me just choose a different color here. Okay, this is list of bool inside that language. So depending on the language syntax, of course you will write it a different way, but what I'm trying to say here, this is also a valid JSON, and here it's not specifying all the details. It's just saying you true, false, false, true, but you as a developer, and you already know what is to expect. As I said in the beginning, if your server returns just one string or one any of the data type, it's a valid JSON, but you should be knowing that what it is returning. So looking at this true, false, false, true, I will not understand anything, right? But if it says that Bluetooth true, Wi-Fi false, something like that, you know, portrait mode true, and torch false, it makes much sense to me that it is talking about the settings of the application, and I know that it's talking about the Bluetooth wear and camera settings and all those settings, right? So it can be either way, but the preferred way, you have to use it with settings. So just we are talking about the camera phone settings, so it would go somewhat like this. let me just turn to black. So you will have one object which says name, okay, Bluetooth, comma, is on, true, okay, and you don't need comma, so you can put curly brace here, and then you have to put comma because this is one of the object. Now if you are not liking this way, so let me just put it this form, comma. Now why I put it comma? Because I'm going to add another object. So again it will repeat the same name, and this time I will say Wi-Fi, okay, and then again I will write is on will be false, okay, and here goes another comma, 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 and then you're gonna end up your array. So this is also a valid JSON. Now you can see the difference on the screen. The first one says true, false, false, true, where you don't know anything about what is it talking. But if you want to create something like that and you want to just understand yourself, you can do that. It's totally fine. But if you want to create something meaningful, you want to use something like this, so you should be passing array of objects and say like name Bluetooth is true, then second object will tell Wi-Fi is false, and it keeps it goes like this. Okay, so Beacon of the Hope is asking one question. Mr. Reality says, I should feature your comment, by the way. He says, finally I made it in someone's list. So hopefully you'll make in someone's other's list as well. I wish you best of the luck for that. Okay, so let's take a question from Beacon of Hope. What it says that, what's the difference between array encode and object encode, which is advisable to use on list? So when you know that, when you're talking about list of item, when you are only considered about, you just care about what are the multiple items you have, you are talking about the array, which means you're talking about the square bracket. Inside a square bracket, to describe that thing, you can use any of the data type, just like I said, true, false, or you want to specify some different properties, so then you will put object. So if you have to look at this way, your array is going to be one of the data types, so it's preferred to use object inside array so that you have a list of objects. Makes sense? So Ixof says curly braces is object and square bracket is array. That's totally correct. And Mr. Reality says a list is always square and could be map or set depending on the language it's question. Exactly. Now if you are talking about different language, so let's just cover that point real quick. So when we see this, right, key and value, so different language can treat it as a different way. So if you talk about the Dart, it is map. If you talk about maybe C#, it's a dictionary, right? So this is totally fine. Like, let the language understand in its own way, but at the end, what it is, it's a set of key value pair, right? So when you try to parse your JSON inside Dart language, it will give you the map, and map of what? String, comma, dynamic. What it means that all of your key will be a string, looking at this, okay, and this can be any object, boolean, string, integer, array, object, so that it passes to the dynamic. But this is something about the Dart language. What about the C#? So it will pass it to the dictionary, where dictionary also have the same kind of structure, where you have the key and you have the value. So every language will treat it differently. That's fine. That's maybe the keywords of that language, I should say. But the idea here, you are having a set of data which is represented in the form of key value. So whatever you can call it. Okay. All right. So we covered this one as well real quick. Now, what else is pending? Just remind me in the comment section. So we discussed about how to read the JSON, how to form array, and how to form something. Now let's talk about this as well real quick. So generally, when you're talking about REST API, you are only concerned about some of the topic, like you just want to know list of the user, you just want to know list of the subscriber. So you're gonna get something like this response here. Okay, so here you are getting list of the device features and the status of it. But sometimes what happens, you come across a JSON which have, you know, a nested data, like it has all sort of information, all sort of data. But although it is not preferred in REST, but this is something which is coming from a long time and people are still following that. So I'll just tell you in a moment. And let me give a big shout out to Ahmed, who has done a super chat of 40 rupees. A big shout out and a clap for you. Thank you so much. Okay. So when we talk about something where we have so much of information and we are concerned only about one type of data, okay? So let's say that your server has returned you with, let me just, yeah, this big JSON, okay, which is an object. Mr. Reality, super chat is not available. No worries, you can do PayPal to me, okay? It's totally fine. Your support and your likes and comments are accepted as a payment. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so maybe you will get something like this. Status. Okay. Then error null. Error message. This is just, you know, one of the typical thing you will get inside API responses if it is written in C# or somewhere. Error message, of course, it's gonna be null because you got the success response. And there's something called data, okay, and there you are having maybe this one. So sorry, you don't need comma at the end. Even I do that mistake that I put a comma at the end, but I can see that it's wrong. Okay, now what you have to focus here is this part, data part. Because other things, of course, if you want to check a status of your API, you will be looking at this one right here, right? If it is not okay, then you will be checking for the message, then for this. And in this situation, how you gonna read? Like if you're just concerned about this part and you don't bother what is there inside the status, as soon as, like, until you have received the data, means you're gonna find, okay, this is good, I have received the data, I don't care what is the status, I don't care what is the error, I just want to get the data part. Okay, so you may come across this situation, like your API response contains a lot of information, but you are just, you know, concerned about one of the key. So in different language, you will write it a different way, but the idea is you have to provide the key name which you are concerned about, and from there it will give you the another JSON. So currently you have one JSON. When you provide the key, it will give you another JSON at this level. So let me just highlight this. So at this level, whatever data you have, if you provide this key, it's going to give you the subset of that JSON, and you can just deal with this part. You no longer have to consider the status and all this thing. So if I'm asking, give me the list of employees, and you gave all this data, but I don't care what is the status and all these things, so what I can do, I can write something like this. So consider that I'm getting a response from the server, and then I will say data. Now here, data is our key. So once you write something like this, what you're gonna get is all the information, all the JSON subset you have inside the data key. Oh, okay, makes sense. And this is how you read. Like sometimes you want to ignore some part, you can do like this. Like maybe I have done this couple of times, which is you know, let me talk about one of the scenario. Okay, I was checking one of the status of this lights. Okay, so what happened, my server is returning some information which is required to other API. So there's something called transaction ID. So when you perform something, there's a transaction ID. Along with that, there was some other information. So what information I have passed to get the transaction done, that information is coming back to me. okay, and along with that it's giving me the transaction ID as well, but I don't care about the response like the request part I have. So let me just represent it here. Okay, and guys, you can ask a question as well, like if you have faced any difficulties, if you have faced any issue understanding the JSON, because I will answer one Discord question also over here. So that would be pretty much it, like last question for this live stream, last thing for this live stream, unless you people ask any question. So what I was talking about the transaction ID. So say for example, I'm passing this information, something blah blah like this, all this information I'm passing to API, okay, and once API has done processing, what it does, it returns me the same data, because in some situation to maintain a state you need that data, okay, it's returning me the same exact data. Along with that, you know, it's returning me the transaction ID, okay, which is like 1 2 3. So this is my JSON, something like this. So what I have requested, like this I have requested, and I'm getting this back again. So I don't need to parse that unless I need it. I don't need to parse and create a model for that. No, you don't need a model in this situation. What you can do, once you have received the response, which is this part here. Oops, what happened here? Okay. So once you have received the response, which is this part, what you care about the transaction ID. So you can write something which I have shown here. Oh. You will write response transaction ID, and it will give you 1 2. My brain and hand is not in sync now for some reason. I'm writing something else, doing something. Okay. So you got the point, right? This is how you understand JSON. This is how you read and write JSON. So I hope I made myself clear. Let's go through all the points one more time, and then I will talk about the Discord question as well, if I don't forget. Okay. So what is the JSON? It's a way of representing the data. Just that's it. And it is always in the form of a key value pair. Okay. The object is in the form of key value pair. If you just have arrays like this is also valid JSON without any data inside it. It is a valid JSON. It says I'm an array of something, but I don't know of what. So it's a valid JSON. But generally when you talk about JSON, it's a key value pair. Okay. Why JSON we have discussed, because generally there's two-way XML and JSON. XML is hard to parse. XML is not lightweight. JSON is lightweight, easy to understand, easy to communicate. So that's why you should be using JSON. The data types, of course, it supports string, number, boolean, null, object, and array. These are the 6 data type it supports, and you can nest any of the data type inside any one. So your array can have object, that object can have array, and that array can have another string, or like that. You can have any level of nesting unless it follows the structure that you have the key, you have the value, you have the key, you have the value, right? In that form. So we discussed about the basic, the most common JSON. It looks something like this. You have a curly braces, which means you're returning one object and you're defining what is the key, what is the value, right? Then we talked about the commas. So every single element, like if you're writing array, so each element of the array should be comma separated. If you're writing just key values and like that, so all those items should be separated by comma, but the last element should not have a comma at any level of the JSON. Whatever is the last element of your JSON should not have comma, even if it is in between. Like you have items and you have array inside that, so the last item of that array will not have comma. Then you can carry on with the next element, then the last element of that element will not have comma. So it's like a nesting thing. But think about this perspective, that whenever you want to separate two data, then only use comma, otherwise there should not be any comma. Okay, then we talk about the nested JSON, where we can have array inside your JSON. Then inside that array you can represent an object, entire object, something like that. And then we discussed about how we should visualize, how you should think about looking at the JSON, what it's going to be in the form of your programming language. So if you look something like names, strings like this, it's going to be list of string. If you look at something like true, false, false, it's a list of boolean. But general practice, we return something like this in a real world, where we get list of object. You have one object which defines some property, then another object, and then you have a list of, this can be called as list of settings. Okay, and your each setting will then have information like what is the name and what is the status. Make sense? Okay, so then we discussed about how this object is getting converted. So different language, they call it different thing because that's how the language is written, right? But the JSON idea is remain same. It has a key value pair and it's going to convert into map or dictionary or set, whatever you call. It has all the same purpose. It has something to define it uniquely. It has some value inside it, right? And then we discussed about where you have unwanted JSON data inside your JSON. You are not, you don't want to care about other types, other elements. You can just ignore them and you can just write something like this, where you are defining the key and you are trying to read that from key. Now, this is something which works in the Dart. If you are running in C#, probably you will write response dot element at, those are a different syntax. I'm not even sure like this is a valid word, element, something like that. But the idea is you provide the full JSON and then you define that at this element I want a data, and it will give you the subset of that. Like it will just ignore everything, and from that element it will pick the JSON and give it to you. So every language has a different way of writing, but you can do something like this. Okay, we discussed all those things. Now let's talk about one of the issue one user has mentioned on the Discord server, and then we will take few questions and we'll end up the live stream. Before we take question from Discord server, let me just take question from the live stream. Okay, super chat not available in my country. Xsoft have tried many times but not working. That's fine, totally fine. Super chat not available in my wallet. Okay, wallet. Okay, so Salu Balde is saying, mashallah, I've gained a lot from you. May Allah make it easy for you to keep up. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Being fasting and in a month of Ramadan, someone blesses you, it feels very good. Okay, Beacon saying, suggestion, can you make a series that implement GetX and custom API backend? I have a series of video on GetX, by the way. Custom API backend is something not my expertise, to be honest. Like I have written APIs, I have done a lot of modification in APIs, I have optimized it for sure, but it is not something I do for the full-time job. But to create a video on something, you really need a deep knowledge of that, and you really need dedicated that much dedication to write something like that. Okay, then an API call that query from MySQL. It's pretty easy, it's just about the basic concept of engineering which you have learned. Let me just switch to the camera view because I'm reading the chat. Okay, so it's just a basic idea. You might have done the connection to your database inside your college curriculum, that you create RDBMS database and then you create a bridge and then you talk to that database, you fetch some records. So that is all about writing API, like in a nutshell. Okay, there's a lot more work involved, but you have some database, you write a connection string that you provide the username, password, and the path of that database. Okay, and once you get connected, you can query select a star from this table and get me data. So you have received whatever data you need, and from that point you will be returning that to the API call. So then you need a public API where you have the data hosted, the API hosted, and then you just say return this object, or maybe return this object in a form of a string, in a form of a JSON, something like that. Like PHP, take example of PHP, they just return one object, and that API, the public API, will give you that data. So there's a client, there's an API which writes the query select a star from whatever, and that communicates to the database through a bridge. That's all about API. Video quality look like 1080p in 360p. Oh, seriously? Is it like is it really in a bad quality? It should be 1080p in 30 frames per second. Hopefully, let me just check if you have reminded me. Let me check quickly. So CPU utilization 26%, but still the API 30 frame per second, which is fine because my internet is now working good. I don't know what happened that time for with my internet. It just came to 12 frames, 15 frame per second. Generally, frame per second is concerned with the network. So, or maybe it can be because of my utilization of CPU. But currently, I'm on 26% CPU, and it's running fast. So, we should be good. Okay, how to start Flutter as a beginner? You can subscribe channel CodeX. That is the first thing you have to do as a beginner, and then you have to learn by doing it. I always say that you don't have to just watch complete tutorial. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to start writing something, get error, then search on a Google, write down in the Discord community, ask people, and that's how you learn something. Okay, can I learn both Flutter and Kotlin simultaneously as a beginner? You should choose only one because Flutter uses Dart language, Kotlin is something else. But if you want to target Android native platform, then go for Kotlin. Otherwise, you should be good with Dart language. Okay. Learn Flutter. Can you please tell me your paid courses? I don't have paid courses so far, and I don't even have a plan to create one. I have plans to create some free courses on YouTube channel. So stay in touch by clicking the subscribe button. Okay, video is great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Video quality is great. I'm watching at 480p, but it feels like watching. Okay, that's great. So, well, I've covered all the comments. Now let's get back to the question of Discord, which is going to be a final for this live stream in some deep voice. Okay. So in one of my tutorial, I think it's about API consumption, right? So what I did is I'm getting a list of item from server. So my API response looks something like this. Oh, oops. Again, I'm saying that my hand and my brain is not in sync now. So the API which I called in that particular API was giving me list of news items. This curly bracket is dancing, so just ignore that. So consider that these all are news items which I'm receiving, and what I did is I created list of article. Okay, and this thing was parsing fairly good enough because this is a proper data type. It's a list of object, and I know that each object here was an article because the key value I created as an object. So it was working fine. I was able to bind it to the UI. But one person, what he tried, I'm just giving you example that this happens a lot because when you follow something and when you move like to implementing a real world, you get a different response and you are stuck like, what should I do now? So what he received is something like this, okay, which I have taken one example. Status was okay. And then there was something else, then there was something else, and then there was data, okay, and which in turn was this list of objects, okay, list of article. So the list of article was here, but he was receiving all these extra information because that depends, that varies person to person. Okay, I'll just hold for a second and I'll be right back. Okay, my mom was there. So the point is that when I wrote the tutorial, okay, so it was a fair straightforward data and I was able to parse it to the list of article and my UI was populating. But when he implemented the data and he called one of the API, he was getting this response and his data was, his list of article was hidden somewhere here. And he was trying to parse this entire thing as a list of article. Do you think that it is going to be passed to list of article? No, of course. First thing, it is not a list, it is object, and it has a different properties. So two things he can do. One way, which I've already told, from the response, whatever he has received, he will pick the key data and he will get the list of article. Once he pick that data from the response, then he have to parse that subset of the data, then he will get a list of article, right? And the other thing you can do, instead of creating that my API gives list of article response, you can say my API gives article data, or maybe article info I should write. Okay, so you can create a class which says article info, and then inside that class you can create status and whatever property it returns, just like this one, right? And then you have data, which is list of article. So there's either of two way. Now this all I'm talking in regards of Dart, but this is quite valid for all the languages. So either you create a model which have all the fields of the JSON which is coming from the server, or if you are just concerned about some part of the JSON, like here he was just concerned about the data part. So your model can be just list of article, but what you have to do first, once you get the JSON, you have to take the subset of the JSON from that key and then try to parse it to list of articles. Make sense? And the light over here is off, the brown light. Let me just show you. Over here I have one light which gives a feel of a tungsten, like it's a brownish light, which is turned off now, and it's very bad, like because I charge it for the full night and day, but it didn't even lasted for 2 hours or 1 hour, I'm not sure. Okay, so don't make these mistakes. Understand your JSON first. Is it returning object? Then create a class similar to that. Is it returning array? Then parse it to the respective value. Or if you don't want to create object directly, like don't want to map JSON as it is in the object, so you specify what part of the JSON you need and then map it to the object. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope you people understood how to read, understand JSON, and maybe I'll do a next video on JSON where I'll talk about more about working with the Dart language specifically, and maybe I'll show you some real examples on the API, or maybe I can show it now. Okay, but first let me take a few questions. Mr. Reality says, do you mind if I share my channel? I teach Flutter aimed at beginners. Of course, I would not mind. So go ahead and send me link of your channel, or I should, can I jump to your channel? No. Put user in timeout, hide user, add moderator. Okay, I have added you as a moderator, so don't do anything bad. But what you can do is you can write link, you can provide link of your channel in the comment section so that others can also see it. Perfect. Now I'm removing you from the moderator role. How do I do that? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So guys, go ahead and check out Mr. Reality's channel. He says that he has something to offer about a basic Flutter development, and you should check out his videos, and I'll also see. Okay, let's take few comments before we end this session. So more vid about provider, please. Provider, I did one video, I think, where even it was not Riverpod that time, it was just a plain provider. So maybe I will do more videos on that if people really need it, because you should be learning Riverpod now. Don't call it provider anymore, because Riverpod is much better version of provider. It's just a whole rewrite of provider, so you will find it much easier. Okay, Jana M is saying, so I learned Flutter, but I also want to get placed in Ola, Uber, Swiggy. Current, I am a Flutter intern beginner, but these companies are working in native. Can you suggest me an idea? So I would suggest you something that don't focus on Uber, Ola. You can be in Google writing a Flutter APIs or SDK, right? So don't set a low goal for yourself. And what it means that do what you love. Like when I saw the Flutter framework, initially I was abusing it. Okay, don't care about, don't consider that. When I heard of Flutter, okay, this is running on a canvas, this is running on that, okay, let's leave it. But after a couple of months, when I saw there's a hype around that, I tried myself. And when I tried and when I wrote one application and another, I just felt, I fell in love with Flutter. And from that moment, like initially I was a Xamarin developer, but I started learning Flutter, I started teaching Flutter, and today I'm a Flutter developer, no matter in what company. So the company doesn't matter if you are doing what you love, if you are enjoying what you are doing. So just don't care about that. You can be in a Google writing Flutter APIs, or maybe I will be listening to you giving a session on Flutter. So don't set a low goal. Just considering that Uber, Ola, and those companies are very popular in India and you want to be there, so that's why you want to learn native. Don't do that. Learn whatever makes you happy, right? And if that native is something like you are more concerned about, no, I should write some technology where I will get bit of performance I'm caring about, so go ahead, write a native application. That is what you want to write, but not for the sake of company, for sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Reality. You also made my day by writing so many comments. Okay, then what we have, can you do a video regarding how to master Flutter docs? Flutter docs, actually sometimes, it's just a description of the property. It doesn't give you much detail, but of course they have tried very hard, cover all the properties and all the documentation really well. But what you can do is, and what I prefer generally, I just go in detail implementation of that part whenever I'm writing something. Say for example, I'm writing a text button and I want to understand all of the properties of text button. So what I will do, I will click command and click on the text button, that word. So it will jump to that implementation of that file where you can read, okay, how this has been written, what are the properties they have, what are the assertions they have. Like when you end up getting red screen, so that is because one of the assertion, it has failed. So you will come across all those things when you go inside that implementation of that file. Ixoft, we need to talk, bro. Of course, you can write comment if you want to talk. And if you have some personalized request, let me just do this thing here real quick. So I will put link of my Ko-fi profile. Okay. Just in a moment. Here we go. So this is link for my Ko-fi profile. If you really like my content, if you enjoy learning with me, so you can buy me a coffee there. You can contribute to channel CodeX. And if you want to have one-on-one session where you want to talk about Flutter, where you want to talk about the basic of mobile development, JSON, API, HTTP calls, and any sort of thing related to Flutter and mobile development, so you can book a session there. And it doesn't have to be just a general talk about Flutter. If you have some challenges in your ongoing project, you are stuck somewhere, you want a guidance with something, you can go ahead and book a slot of 1 hour where I'll we'll have a one-on-one session there, and we'll talk about, like, we'll try to fix that issue if I can in that time, or at least I will give you some suggestion, my insights on that based on my expertise. Okay. So Mr. Reality has replied to Mohan Mikari. The goal is to get your hands dirty. Do not rely on tutorial completely. Subscribe to CodeX first, learn, then basics, and just try to create something simple. You will learn a lot. Exactly. That's what I will say at the end to all my viewers, that whenever you want to learn something, just learn the basic. Like, of course, you have to learn the installation. You have to learn the starting point, which is the main file, which is what. So just learn that. And once you're able to see one pixel, like once you're able to see hello, then write a couple of more lines with your yourself. So now you can see, now you can write a string, now you can write a string, hello CodeX. Then you should be thinking, okay, what if I want to take that CodeX as an input, so user can specify his name. So just write one input, and maybe you can search how to write an input box, how to write a text field, how to get input inside Flutter, something like that. You can Google. So it will tell you how to create input box. Once you have the input box, then you will be searching how to get the data from the input box. So whatever you have written, how to fetch that. And once you know that, you search for how to add a button, which probably is a very basic thing, you should be knowing it. So then on a click of a button, how to trigger something, and then combined of all of that, you will get something like hello Afzal, like hello and whatever you have written inside that text box. So that is how you learn any of the platform. You don't learn it by seeing all the tutorials, you just learn the basics and you try yourself. All right, thank you so much, and I will see you guys in the next one. Keep watching all the videos on channel CodeX. Subscribe if you haven't already, because in last video I said don't subscribe, and a lot of people have subscribed really. So don't do that reverse psychology. If I say subscribe, then do subscribe if you haven't already, and it will help you a lot. Thank you so much in advance. Okay, so see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for joining today's live stream. Take care. Bye-bye.